before I left you, I said I would look for pictures where she had her hair on a pillow, and I don't have it. So here's a case where I thought everything was simple. I saw a picture in my mind, and when I come to put it on the computer, the two pieces quite don't line up. They do. They line up beautifully when it comes to light and perspective, but compositionally it's a little tough. I don't want their faces to be so close, because to me then the disparity in the conversation, the essence of this picture, is not quite there. If they were close, then that's not the intention. The intention is that they're further apart and there's non-communication. So flopping her makes more sense for what I want to accomplish, and then obviously Photoshop is the tool to make that happen. So I started to look for other pictures that might help me out. So let me just show you what the challenge is. Here we have Tia, and her hair is laying on this rail and then falls straight down. And as you see, there's not a lot of detail here, and definitely not a lot of contrast to make this fall beautifully into the pillow like this. So there's two things to this, right? One is find a pillow that she could lean on that comes up here, that she sort of feels like she's on this bed and not falling off it. And the last piece would be to have some hair that I could blend in there. Another thing is to paint on hair, which we can. It's another option that we can explore, but I'd like to use photography in pieces first. And what I did find was this piece, where the hair sort of comes out. It's not perfectly sharp, but I think that's okay. And it's easier to blend these pieces into a pillow than it is to blend this hair, which is barely any contrast. At least here there's a lighter background, there's some highlights to it. And maybe I could, lay this gently onto the pillow next to her. So that will be the two things that I'm looking for when I want to solve this problem. The last thing would be to replace the wall back here, and I've been talking about that quite a bit, and the file is already in our picture called back wall replace. So when that's done, it's the fine tune. So it's actually three pieces then. We want to create some beautiful highlights. You know where the highlights are, we want to enhance those. She's so slim and beautiful anyway, there's not a lot of work to be done to her, to be honest. And then I want to create this transition here. We already worked a little bit on this, but I could highlight, for instance, this light here, and the highlight that comes in here, maybe that transitions through into the space. And obviously there's a discrepancy in color right here. We do have our highlight on the door, which I think will add a little bit to the composition here and some attention to this area. This is too yellow, we want to make this bluer. And with those steps, three of them, we're kind of done. So let's just dive straight into it. We're going to start with the pillow. And this was an earlier frame that I shot with the pillow on this side. So we obviously need to flop it, just like we did with Tia. And I think that would work out quite fine. There's a lot of elements to this, so I'm just going to delete this on top here, as we don't need to carry all that memory with us. So we're going to flop it horizontally, and then we're going to lay this pillow behind her. We would need to make that a bit bigger. This is actually a good reference there, the bar on the edge of the bed. So let's just try to make those the same size. There. And this is a better perspective on the bar as well. It follows our wall a tiny bit better, I think. So why don't we just try to tweak it like that. Maybe put it up like this. Maybe even bigger. Make her really fluffy. Becomes an awfully large pillow, but let's see if we could prop this up behind her like this and see if we can make that believable. Obviously we gotta get rid of this pillow right in there. And let's see how this will work out. We put our layer in there just by dragging it in there. It's in the right place. We're going to add a layer mask. I'm going to call this pillow. And I'm not sure if we need this pillow above. Let's see what's underneath here. So there is texture to the bed behind her. I kind of like this better though, covering up this part here. So let's see what we got going on. Let's turn this on, and obviously we don't need any of this stuff on this side. So I'm just going to follow the pillow edge roughly. and delete all that stuff. Again, the process is the same. It's to select it and not delete it like I say. I mean by taking it away by using a mask. So it's not deleting again. It's that infamous option delete, and you will fill it with black. I'm not sure if I need to mention that much more since I said it so many times now. So let's see. We're going to zoom in a little bit. And even though I like the perspective on the bed here better, it obviously does not work with all the stuff that we got going on. So I'm going to just take this away, and let me see. I'm going to do a harder edge here. Maybe it will be as if we come in here and just let this pillow fall right in here. It's not bad. I'm making this difficult for myself, but I do think it's worth it to create this distance between the two and not just give up and say, okay, I shot it that way and that's the way the picture is going to be. I think using Photoshop in this case in a way to really push this forward and let it, you know, work to my advantage so that I could accomplish what I wanted to do with this photograph. Obviously, I think it could be a beautiful image, having her laying in the bed the way she was, but I think this distance here is just going to make things better. I'm just going to take Tia out of the bed for a minute and just see what I got going on. Obviously, I don't need to pay too much attention to how it falls, but so let's see. We're going to try to find a seam or something that's easy to cut along, and maybe it's the shadow here. I think that could work pretty well, as if this casts shadows along right here. So first I thought I would keep the edge there of the fabric, but maybe I'll just go and don't use these shadows. I go right up above it, and then I create my own shadows underneath. I'm going to keep this one here though. This feels pretty good. Come deep down there. I'm going to change modes here, go into our quick mask mode, and obviously when you have a hard edge like that, this will cast the shadow down onto the mattress below it. So that will be our shadow. We're going to invert that selection. We're going to put this underneath the pillow layer and pull this down and then see what that does. That creates kind of a hard shadow right in there. And it feels like that pillow is falling off that edge. So, not bad. I'm going to call this pillow shadow. So let's talk about shadows for a minute. Most of the time when you pull a shadow, you only want to grab the top anchor point. You could do this as well if you want to make it a lot deeper. And that feels almost too contrasty as we look into these shadows here. They don't have that black. So let's take that away. And that feels actually better to me. You can come down a tiny bit like this. There. And this feels really quite good. I think this will be behind Tia's head, but let's fine tune that a tiny bit. And just come along that edge. Nice. We're going to select the quick mask tool again. And I think we're going to create another shadow along here as well. And we're going to invert that selection. And we don't want to paint everywhere here. We just want to blend the pillow into the background a tiny bit. So we're going to go above the pillow, create our curve, and then tie it to the pillow layer and pull that down a bit, right there. And maybe we pull down the top anchor point to flatten that shadow a little bit. That feels pretty good. Feels like we now created a true pillow for Tia to put her head down on. So it will be sort of a double pillow situation here, but I think that's okay. And I wonder if we should live with the I'm going to try to do this. I'm thinking and I'm talking, so I didn't finish that sentence. What I wanted to say was I think we maybe should live with the comforter underneath rather than the comforter on top. So let's think about this. When you guys go along and you create this picture, it's essentially just to put down a sheet and then put it right on top of this sheet, and you just blend it organically like I just did. Find a seam or a curve in the sheet and then layer on top. And you will do way better than me in this, because hopefully you'll put her head on a pillow and lay her down in that bed, and you will create a piece that is if you choose to lay her down. But if you want to do something similar to this and you choose to lay her down, obviously you would learn from my mistakes in this and put her head on a pillow, and you don't have to worry about cutting out here. You would just cut along. Let me see if I use the other marker. If you just cut along the edge right here on the pillow, you have something where her or him is in the bed just beautifully from the get-go. So let's see if we could fix this a little bit better. Now I'm making all these mistakes here, so hopefully you'll learn something from it, and again how we could use Photoshop to correct our mistakes a little bit. Not a little bit, a lot. A lot bit. So coming in here just till I find an edge that would allow me to line these things up, which it kind of didn't do along any of this. This would probably be the best one right in here. So let's brush this out and allow those highlights on those creases there. Okay. So as I hit this, I see where my mask is, and you can see that I left a lot of residue in here, which we don't want in our file. You can see that I do have some in here as well, and it's part of the process of cleaning up a file. You would need to go through all these masks and make sure that everything is just really tight. I'm gonna just do what I see right here because I'm anxious like that, and there they are gone. Cool. Better. So this will be our hard edge here between the different pillows. And then maybe we could do something like this too. So she doesn't have two pillows but one. Again, I'm looking for corners and creases where the eye will just accept that there are different sheets here and they're all just bundled up just right in there. All right. It's one massive pillow you got going here, but it's kind of fun. So now we're coming to the areas where we kind of need to, you know, really do some finessing to get her to stay in here beautifully. We can maybe just use that hump, to be honest, as if she's coming across a highlight on her pillow. So you have a highlight here on the hair and the shadow here. If I'm going to do this and use this situation here, I would definitely need to follow that shadow. So I'm going to go same process, quick mask, paint, Command Shift I, and let's see if we could tone that down, which is on the pillow right here. And we create a shadow that fits a little bit better with what we see on the hair. We come onto our mask and then fill too deep here, so maybe that shadow is just coming on top there. A little bit better. Too much. So what I looked at this is the light quality on the background, and I see sort of the hard edge that I had here, and I thought, oh, maybe that's too much. The background tone here is just really a uniform tone. So if I do my pencil as an opacity at 30%, I could slowly sort of brush a transparency between these layers so that the background soft pillow tone comes through in this texture that we have on top. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the simpler things, which is masking Tia properly, and then we're going to see if we can replace her hair. Just going back and forth here to see how I've done on this mask, and obviously I haven't done all that great. So here the background tones are really similar, so I'm just going to let the two bleed into each other and then roughly come back and sort of brush this back in right here. So again, the masking process is different for everyone. What I'm working with is brushes to fine tune. Here the difference is really quite subtle between the background and Tia's arm. So I'm going to go a smaller brush for sure, make it a little bit more textural in the transition. I'm going to go 10% on this, and I'm going to do a soft brush on top, as if the light that's in the background bleeds over her hand right here and bleeds into the background. Sorry, no, onto her hand. And the two foreground and background elements sort of sit together a little bit better. So when I zoom out on that, that feels quite a bit better than what it was. All right, I think we're getting closer. So let's see what we could do with this hair, and if it's useful at all. We're gonna close that one out and see if my idea of adding this to the pillow will work out. So I'm gonna put that on top. Obviously the gravity here will be a little bit different, so I'm excited to see if it will work. At least we could use some pieces of it. Try to line up their faces here roughly. I'm going to call this for hair. And there she is. It does not look quite right, but I think we'll just use the edges, and then we'll take it from there. This might not work, to be honest, but it might also work just beautifully. There's so many creative solutions, right, to cutting out hair. And in this case, we don't have a crisp highlight on the hair. It's just kind of soft and mushy because of the 500 ISO and all that stuff. So this is not the kind of easiest cutout that we could have worked with. And man, her hair just looks, let me see. So I'm not sure if this is right, but I'm going to do a few things to see if it sits better. The first one is to add some more color to her hair, because this part I added definitely don't seem as vibrant as the hair that she has. So by doing this, it feels a little bit better already. And what I see is that we can definitely use the bottom part of her, and maybe I'll just do this. Maybe we'll just use some of these strands in here to sort of make them feel like they fall onto the pillow a little better. Sorry for getting a little quiet, but I'm just thinking here what the solutions are to make this happen. So I want to definitely try to make this darker. It's sitting on the shadow side of her, and her face is in the shadow, so this pillow here and all this stuff should probably fall into shadow too. Maybe that would help everything feel a little better. So we're going to come in here. And what I just did there was to drag this into the pillow layer stack. And I think that feels better for sure. There's a little bit down here that should be included in that. Okay, so we're going to continue this. We're going to see. So we're going to call this for deep shadow, which is a shadow that sits a little deeper. We're going to call this for broad shadow, as it's all over the pillow. And now I'm not sure if I want this one here anymore. It might just be nice that it opens up. When we created this shadow in here, maybe we don't need this corner shadow. So let's just call it corner shadow. And take down the opacity so that it's not as prevalent right there. And then we're going to take this deep shadow here, and we're going to apply it to more than one place. That was obviously too much there, but that helps. Cool. Not a perfect edge yet. These here all look good. She has this crazy blue hair highlights here. So let me see, where is she? Here's Tia. We're going to change our brushes a little bit. I usually like to work with big brushes, but we're going to see if we can use a brush to paint in this hair a little bit and give it some texture. Then the second thing is to basically try to paint in here, and essentially it's just to create a layer and then start painting it on there, sampling from the colors that's in her hair already, and create some strands. So we're going to call this for hair, and I'm going to pull up our brushes. So usually when I work, I don't work on a singular screen like this. I work on two screens, but since I'm doing screen capture for you, this is the way I have my palette set up. On my ordinary setup, I have one screen with just an image, and on the other side, I have all the palettes open pretty much. Starting with the setup you see here, this will be the first thing you see to the right on the next screen, and then it follows with the brushes and all, all the other windows that's relevant to what I'm doing in Photoshop. So let's just see. As I'm looking at these brushes and starting to think about painting in here, I've kind of been... So there's more to this that's missing, and before I start painting in here, trying to blend it, I think I need to sort out this pillow and make sure that the pillow and all these things that I have around it feels a lot better. So I'm going to take this pillow and we're going to see if we could prop it up behind her a lot better. I think, yeah. By doing this, I think we'll be in a lot better shape. And yeah, now you can start thinking about painting things in and laying her in there properly without anything behind. If you get this sort of, her head feels more floaty, and I think now I could maybe push this up a bit. Lay her in a manner that feels a little bit more organic. So now maybe the hair that I had could help us. Let me see. So things are starting to feel a lot better. And I think if we do two things now, we use part of this hair and these edges to sit her in there to create the edges of the hair instead of painting those in, and use some of these edges here and pull them up into here so that she falls into the pillow a little bit better. So again, before I start painting hair, let me just see if I could grab some of these pieces and move them up and sort of put her into the pillow a bit more. And these pieces come from right in here, which I think is a part of her. So let's just look at that. I'm gonna disable everything around her, and it comes from right in here. So I'm gonna take this piece just about there and copy that. And I'm gonna put this, let's just put this above Tia for now. And then we're gonna turn on some of these pieces that we have. We put the hair in there. I'm going to make sure to put the pillow back in. I'm going to just scroll down here, there. Now the layer mask, you got to turn that back on, and here we are close. Just turn the brushes off for a minute, and we're going to scroll up, and you're going to turn her hair off, and then we're going to take this little piece that we have. Not going to move Tia. This is the piece that we want to move up, and use some of these edges on the pillow that sticks her and her hair behind it more. I'm going to add a mask. I'm going to call this pillow edge. makes things feel quite a bit better. So obviously there's a color difference here and there's a shadow difference. So we're gonna do another curve layer, connect this to what we're doing and pull that down. Feels too greenish. So we know what we're gonna do then. We're gonna come down to our green channel, add a little magenta. Feels a little bit too much, but right about there, maybe a little bit darker. So going through the process that I'm doing now, it's really just a lot of practice to see what is missing, if it's darkness, if it's color, if it's contrast. There's some tools to help you in this, and when I blend pieces like this, one of the things I like to do, I haven't done it yet today, but it's to turn everything into black and white. Then you will get a sense if this feels right in black and white, you know it's a color issue and it's not a tone issue. And to me now, you can see this feels a little bit flat. So maybe, you know, if we work with the contrast first and then we come back and tweak the color. So come back out, we come in here, and if it's a contrast thing, we're gonna make it more of an S curve. So this comes even higher. There, feels a little bit green. So now it's just a tiny, tiny adjustment. And again, we're gonna use our plus keys. So we get the highlight to the middle of the curve. And we're gonna just pull that down a tiny bit. It changes, and I feel that we need less of this adjustment right in there and more of it up here. So I'm going to go on an opacity and just slightly brush away some of that curve right in there. And I now feel that we have Tia a little bit better into that pillow. She feels still a little floaty, but still she's definitely more sunken in there than she was. So let's just see what we could do. Maybe it's a matter of moving this piece up, turning it a little bit. I'm going to call this for blend. And then maybe we'll just, that's the wrong one, pillow edge. So as I do this, I'm looking at her here because it feels like the gravity of this is going straight into the pillow. And maybe that's what makes it floaty. So let's just go back to where this is. Maybe I'll make it a tiny bit bigger. And I'm going to open this up and connect it to these lines here and the seams in the pillow. Oh, I didn't have enough, so we got to go the other way. I'm going to go into the Tia layer and just make sure I brush away her hair so that doesn't shine through. Then we're going to come back up to our pillow edge and bring some of that back in. It kind of worked better where it was, to be honest, before I enlarged it. So maybe I can go back to my history states to here and just leave it right there for now. Then we're going to come to our hair layer. And I bet you some of you might think, why don't I just cut this hair out? And I would have, but it's just really, I think it's better options to fix this than to try to blend that hair in there, because that hair is really, really quite funky. This, on the other hand, could actually work. So oftentimes when I blend hair, I put the hair on multiply and let it blend into the background. Here it does not work as well, and I think we're going to just stick to the process of laying things behind the pillow edge. So we're going to take the hair, put it below the pillow edge, and then see if we can lift it up so that it feels like the hair is not falling straight into the pillow gravity-wise. You know, it's not much, but for some reason, I feel like it helps. As some hair is coming down this way rather than it all just falling deep into the pillow. So I think that's it. From here on out, we're just going to try to brush the hair in and make these masks beautiful up here. And then I'm going to leave this session or this piece of the picture alone. I feel like we spent hours on this, and you probably are going, what the hell? This is just too much. And sorry for my language, by the way. That was not called for, but you can maybe tell that I'm getting close to being just as done with this as you probably are. So we're going to come in and just gently take away some of this blue tone and really just softly push this edge into the pillow. Take all this residual stuff away and then start over with a really soft brush. I'm going to take off the shape dynamics for now. I'm going to create a shadow onto Tia's head as well. As the pillow meets her head, not only the pillow will get a shadow, but Tia will as well. So we come in under Tia, above the hair, and we just go curves. And I forgot to do the inversion of that curve, so I'm going to exit the quick mask, invert it, and then add some density there. Let's see if that helps. I think that helps for sure. Cool. All right. I'm starting to feel a lot better. A lot better. The shadows feels a little dirty because these have been carried away or carried over from what I did prior. So deep shadow's fine. The broad shadow now seems a little crazy, so I'm going to take that highlight away. There's nothing up here to cast this shadow on the pillow, so I'm going to maybe I'll just use the brush, and I'm going to cut this pillow off right along the edge of that shadow there. All right, sorry for that taking so long. I now do starting to feel though that we're getting quite close, and her head is falling in there. Obviously there's more work to be done to it when you zoom into that 300%, but I think you guys get the process. It's more about blending and less about cutting out here. This piece should go away. But let's work on this a tiny bit more, so just don't leave it hanging like that. So this second piece of hair that's in there, just trying to, you know, blend that in there a bit. As hair falls on top of something else, right, there should be a shadow right in here as well. So I'm gonna add that and then work on the mask a tad, and I will move on. I will promise you. I'm gonna come in here. There. So as I made that darker and this sitting in the shade, obviously the extra hair that I added need to feel like it's sitting in the shadow as well. So we're just pushing that down a bit. So there's a few things here that don't quite look as good. So turn Tia off, turn Tia on, and just see what that is. Obviously this area and up in here. So let's just work on that for a tiny bit longer. We talked about the brushes and the presets. So I never really used any different brushes. So let's pull that up and at least for now use the shape dynamics and go in here and see if we can just sort of clean some of this up. Doesn't feel like this is the right technique for this picture, to be honest. Could add a few small little strands in here, but it's almost like it's better to paint onto this frame here, but I'll do a few more. It's so soft here and it's almost out of focus. So this sharper shape dynamics, it's not quite do it. I'm going to come back in here and just soften these shape dynamics that I just put on there. Turn it on. Just add an opacity, so we're blending a little bit of what I've done and soften that out. I think the last thing we're missing is a deep shadow right in here, right as her head meets the pillow. And till we go back through the file and clean it up, we're going to call this for done. going to copy this and I'm going to put it onto her as well. So it not only sits on the pillow, but it also sits at the top of her head. Cool. I'm going to hit Command Save. We're going to turn this off. We're going to take an overview and reassess what else we want to do. I mentioned the wall, this highlights on her. So let's get started on that and see if we can wrap this picture up. As I'm looking at it, everything feels pretty good. So I'm going to come into our TIA folder. We're going to make another curve, which we are going to make quite a bit brighter. That we're going to fill with black, just as we've done the whole time. It's Option Delete. And then we're going to gently come in and erase in some highlights on her. There's two reasons for this for me. One obviously is to create some sassy highlights along her body. Everyone that deals with beauty retouch in women like to create these beautiful highlights where they can enhance them. But also the brightness of this. I think there's, you know, valid for us here to come in and highlight things that might need it. This whole hip area, long hair as well. It would be good for us to highlight, to make her pop a tiny bit. So I feel like I overdid this whole process. So I'm going to just take this down a little bit there. And then instead of going for the already existing highlights, I'm just going to paint in right along this edge of her like this. And call this for light spill, as if this light that we're going to put on here is spilling. Let me see. What we need to do here is attach these to Tia. There. So this doesn't spill on the background, but only on her, so that we get a highlight right at the top. Feels pretty darn good. What I see now is that we get a little bit too much red into her skin tones. So we're going to try to just fix that quickly overall instead of going deep into it. We see the color layer, which we added earlier. Now it doesn't feel so bad on her. So we're going to try to just maybe we do it up here, 50%. Just split the difference so that the green tones in the highlights and the green tones here sort of matches a tiny bit better. A classic thing that everyone pretty much does is to brighten the eyes. And I think we need to do that here as well. So that was not so bad. Maybe Tia and the whole thing here needs to be a little brighter. Let me see. For sure. I'm going to keep that on. I'm going to name this for density. I actually call it contrast, because we have yet to put a contrast layer on Tia. And what we need to do is to push this to the bottom. There's a lot of unnamed layers here now, but we all know that all these things here is pretty much just shadows. So we're going to leave those contrast on the bottom, all these shadow layers. And then we're going to put color on top of this. And then we're going to come in and try this again. The intention of making the eyes brighter, which was where I started when I said this is something everyone does. We tried to work with a catch light when we set this up, and it's there, but it's tiny. So it's good to highlight this a little bit. And now, of course, when you come in here, these things, these shapes, not all that great. Obviously, there's some flaws here which we should address. And I think maybe I'm going to finish this picture up, and then we'll make it a addition, another chapter where I could sit down and really fine tune for the ones that want to go in deep and watch me just really finish this up. I think it's my forte in Photoshop really is putting pieces together and work on the composites. And blending obviously is a big part of that, but it's more about finding the perspectives and the light qualities and all that stuff that makes it happen. So we'll fine tune it, not in this chapter. We're going to make it an additional one that we'll record and add in the extras. Okay, so starting to feel pretty darn good about this whole picture. I'm going to come to the top here. I've yet to do any overall adjustments on the color for this. We did a lot of that in Capture One. I usually spend some time doing the last color tweaks as well, but I feel like we're pretty close, so we can, do a few things here to explore just so we've done it. So for the color segment of this, I would just go into these different channels and push the red, which I don't feel great about, but the skin tones kind of look nice. So, just because I did it now, let's just do this real quick. Make a little red, maybe a little bit more. And we fill this with black. And then we can come in with the eraser, maybe just erase in and see if obviously this became way too much, but a little bit of red into the skin tones. So what we were working with last time, which I didn't like 2 seconds ago, was the magenta and the green, and I felt her skin got too magenta, almost bluish in the shadows. So now getting a little red in there might not be so bad. In any case, maybe we'll leave the skin alone, but the hair really benefits from a little bit of red. So let's again just go and make everything black so that we don't have any in there, and then just come in and we just paint in the hair. Now I spent so much time in here, so we probably don't want to bring more attention to it, but her hair is just so beautiful, so I think we should add a little bit of tone to it. So overall color, again, we continue exploring. That was one thing that came out of exploring color. More green, more magenta, and I don't know, more overall magenta. It's not so bad. Maybe if we combine it with a little bit of blue as well. Yellow. So I encourage you, when you build this background on your own and you put your own person in this bed, just think about what you want it to feel like. You don't have to do this in my color palette. What I think actually I'm going to do for you for this one is to give you the raw files so that you can actually explore in Capture One the different color temperatures. Because if you want to do this in a warm tone, for you to start with my processed blue files, green files, and try to convert them to warm is terrible. You would then tweak the pixels too bad. So I'm going to give you the raw files for this one, and maybe you could take it from there. So let's see. This highlight now really stands out to me as too much. I do like the green, but I do like the darkerness that this change provides. So let's do this. Just take this down 50% on the color, and then we're going to come in and maybe make it a little bit darker right in here. In this darkness, I don't want this to affect her face too much. So we're going to split this up. We're going to copy this and take this off of the color. So you're going to call this final color. I usually like to have these layers way at the top, which I call final color and contrast. And this is where I do the very last minute changes. And this changes from day to day. If I work at night, if I work in the middle of the day, the ambience of the room and looking at the computer, all this stuff is so subtle. So let me see. In this one, we're going to take away the color. And now that they're on separate layers, I could come in here on this final contrast and take that density away from TS face, just like that. One of the last things that we want to try to do beyond this wall, obviously, is to clean up her face a tiny bit. Oh, and the beautiful eyes, the beautiful eyes. Maybe we'll pump them up a little bit. It's not really all that much to do, to be honest. We could try to work with the highlights, even out the skin tones a bit. Maybe that red wasn't all that great anyway, even though it kind of felt like it for a minute. Maybe just take that out. So I'm not the skin master when it comes to retouch, but you could do a tiny bit of it. And just the things that I would love to do. There's a few tools to this, right? We would do it exactly like I've done everything else when it comes to dodging and burning. Just create a lighter layer to brighten things up. Maybe right in there. We fill it with black. And then just start dodging, really. Painting in some of these, let me see, very subtle, maybe on a 10% brush. Just painting some of these darker areas, which will even out the skin a bit. But again, it's not quite that photograph, so I don't really want to go in and do too much skin work here. I mean, she is what she is, laying on the bed, and she's a little dark underneath the eyes and all that stuff, which I definitely would have cleaned up if this was another part of this shoot. As we could show you the other pictures from the shoot where we spent a lot more time cleaning up the skin and making it all beautiful, but for this picture I'm not sure if it's worth it. So, you know, we would come in and I like to use the healing brush, but a lot of people don't like to use it for skin. So the dodging and burning, like I've done here, is really the way to maintain the pixels and the integrity of the skin. Obviously you could just blur the hell out of it and apply the textures and stuff on top, which I'm not a big fan of. It's not my look whatsoever. So there's all kinds of ways to deal with the skin. Again, it's not this picture. So we can take away some of these. I think that would be the extent of it. I mean, this area here is not great. So I would maybe take some of this hair. Let me see. Different ways to do this, right? I could clone this area away, or what I think I'd like to do is to maybe use this part up here. And so we copy and paste it, and we push it down in here. Create a layer mask, we fill it, and then hopefully you can come in and just brush some of this in right in here. So as I did this, I created another highlight, right, which I wasn't a big fan of. So I'm going to push this up and then take away this highlight down in here for sure. So that's how I would do this. Instead of cloning away, still maybe there's some work here to even this part out, and maybe this deserves a little bit of cloning, so we can come in here and soften that up. So maybe I was just reading into this, but that's before, and this is after. I would tone this back a tiny bit, but I do like it better. So we'll come in on that layer and just sort of make a little shadow there again. Would probably clone this in here as well. Her hair looks a little funky here, so I would probably clone this in as well to give her a little bit more depth to the hair. So as we're in this area, I would just tighten this up here a little bit. Yeah. There's different ways of doing this. I'm not sure if that was better or worse, but let's check it out. It should be in the middle. So the idea was good, but the execution was taken too far. So, and I don't want to do more in here, but I did like that this went a little darker by bleeding this in there. So let's just take this down a tiny bit. It's not the best, but you guys get the idea. All right, diving into the back wall before we call this picture finished. I like this tone here too, final color. I wonder if we should try to give it a little bit more blue. I like it. So we're going to zoom in and then go in and basically just take away this back wall. We already have this file in here. It's called back wall, and again we're just using our select tool, our lasso tool, and it'll be a little funkier here to do this perfect as we have a lot of different shapes, but again, the process is doing it rough, getting it placed, and then fine-tuning after. And there is a lot of fine-tuning to be done to this picture still, and I'm not sure if I'm going to go through it. I think the idea of fine-tuning the hair and doing a little finishing chapter that you guys could watch if you want to finish it up, I think that's a good idea rather than me sitting here for another 2 hours. When you get into retouching, things are just slow. So I hope you forgive me as we go through this, and the pace is not the quickest. All right, so we're going to go Command-Shift-I. Oh, we already have this, so we don't have to go the inversions. We're going to undo that, select this, and it's just make that white. And there is our cleaner wall. Obviously it got way wrong color, so we got to come into our curves, and we start with the darkness of it, so that it has the right density. Maybe, let me see. Definitely need some contrast, so maybe it's more like this. So we added the hue saturation, and that is to take away color, which is a little warmer. We have our density, and then I'm going to add some color to it. Again, curves, and I think the first thing we need is to take away red. So we're going to come in here and add cyan. A little too green, so we're going to come in and add magenta. And I think that's closer in color, but now it feels a little dark. So we're going to make sure we put this underneath. And then we're going to come into our contrast here and push this up a bit. There's a light spill around this source here for sure. So we're going to create some of that by doing a larger brush and let that spill onto the wall and behind him so that he feels a little bit better. That can probably allow us to push the other parts a little darker as well. So we're going to do another contrast layer. I'm just going to burn down the edges a bit. There. And we're going to fill that with black. And then open this up only in the edges along these walls and stuff where you would think that this would be a little bit darker. Like that. And we want to maybe spill this way a bit. As I'm spilling this, thinking about the feel of this light source that we have, I mentioned the spillage in here too, and we're going to try to explore that a little bit. Before that, however, we're going to come into our color, and we're going to add a tiny bit more. Let me see, maybe it's red. Maybe I took this too far. There's red in this door here, so that's why I'm thinking that it's not quite green. So there's a bluish tone that's almost a little, let me see, as I said that, maybe we'll try a little blue. There, that feels pretty good. And now it's just to, there's a grain difference here a little bit, so we're going to add a little bit of grain. You can do that right away. So it will be to add noise. And I think that feels pretty good already. We'll just leave it at that. And the selection I did, it's not terrible. Yeah, does not feel so bad. Here it is pretty bad, but we're gonna come in and down on the ground here, it doesn't feel so bad. So maybe I'll do a blend here between what was there before and the new wall that we put in. This is softer, so we're going to feather it maybe just one more pixel, because we already have one feather, and we hide that, and then we're going to come in and just try to brush it in. So I'm going to select this selection, which is just hovering over here and holding down the command key. I'm going to come into our selection tool, or one of them, and we're going to feather this edge. Another one. Then we're going to hide our selection, and then I can come in and just paint into these edges a little bit so they bleed a little bit more. That way the edges I did feel okay, so we could just work this a little bit messy here. So that helped a little bit. So everything back here is pretty soft, so I'm using a larger brush really and just trying to not be so even if I'm not masking it right, to just make my masks a little bit uneven almost in this area, so that feels a little bit feels a little bit more organic. Okay. So I'm going to come in here with a big brush, and this area here I'm just going to let transition. So at 30% maybe, just let that, oh, that's too much. Maybe it's a better way of transitioning this the other way, where I just come in with a real soft brush and just let some of these highlights from the other file just bleed into this a little bit, like that. I'm going to push it back again. And I think that's fine. It's a little awkward down there, but it's probably better. And then we'll make it even darker. Let's see. The reason for me creating this shadow, right, is that it's behind the chair and it was a deeper shadow there already. So just want to make sure I follow what was already back there. Wasn't that much deeper, but a little bit for sure. Okay. So let me see. This highlight here on this door has been bothering me for a while. So what we're going to do is create that highlight, and I'm going to take it away right there. Let me see. This is all blue, and we took a lot of saturation out of this, so it shouldn't be this yellow. So we're going to come in here and sort of take out the yellow from that highlight. That's a little better. Cool. I think we can add a little bit of contrast to our guy. So right in here, yeah, put this on top, because this will kind of be the final changes. So all these can come on top. So add a little contrast here. Essentially, we're going to just make him pop a little bit, just like Tia is. Kind of feel like Tia is a little bit too tight up against this edge of our frame. So let me see if I can. I'm gonna consolidate our layers a little bit. I've been going a little fast here. I haven't named all my layers, but I also want to try to get this finished without you being too bored. So let me see, that's our bed. This is pillow, Tia, some hair, pillow edges. So we're going to select these, and let me see if we can just scoot her down a bit. So here we have our mask on Tia, so we can't really, let me see if we don't apply. So we're going to unselect this, We're not going to select the folder, but we're only going to select what's inside of the folder. All the Tia images, the pillow, hair, and pillow edges. And what happens then is this mask that we created that is sitting right in here is not going to move while we move everything else. So that will allow us to sort of shrink this behind the bars and not having to do that mask again. I think that feels a lot better. So I have some residue here. This line is probably a mask that got stuck with the pillow probably when I rotated it. Feels like that kind of thing. So I'm going to try to turn some of these off here. Oh, wrong here. I'm not crazy about the idea of another pillow behind here, but let me see. If we soften this, maybe it will feel better. Okay, so let's just settle for that for now. It's definitely too blue. So this, something has to be done with this for sure. Maybe it's better. So let's try it again, where we take this out. And you can just let it be a pillow behind there for now. So I turned on and off all these layers, and this corner shadow is what created this line up here. So when we rotated the whole pillow, this created some residue that travels all the way up in here, and obviously has a hard line in here, which we don't want for the shadow. So let's see there. And that's part of the process when I start cleaning up files. I do this, and at the very end I go through every single layer and every single mask to make sure that everything is perfectly done, because it can't really be the way it is now. It will never hold up if it got to be printed big or be anywhere where it would be shown. So I'm going to come in here and redo these masks that got a little bit out of whack as we moved it. There's some issues here as well. I don't think so. This is what happens when you move stuff and I disconnect layers like I did here. This layer then didn't get moved with it, so it's not fun when that happens. I would probably need to move things to fix it. Let me see. It's not crazy bad, so I think we'll live with that for now. Obviously this area now got to be moved and cleaned up a little bit too, but you saw me do it, and I think the process there is okay. We'll fine-tune this for sure, and that, and I think then we should be in a really good place. This area here, I'm not really all that proud of. So this would definitely need a little bit of work. There's hairs here that probably should be painted in. I think that would be the best way to grab these colors, and we'll spend some time just drawing in beautiful strands of hair so it feels organic and lays on top. So again, I think we're going to push that out to another chapter so that we could have the finishing chapter where I go and fine tune all the tiny little pieces to this. So some of these edges I just blended into the background, and as I moved this, they obviously didn't fit into the new background as well. So I'm just going to go through again and make sure all the masks are sitting where they should be. This, let me see, should probably sit in here. So I hope you see the difference now in where I mask the different things. On the top of Tia here, I mask out this part of the bed so that we can move her behind, which we did. And on the actual Tia layer, I mask and work with her. So I'm starting now to fine tune this a little bit more, and I'm not sure how much time you would want me to spend on this. I can think you can sense that I'm losing my patience a little bit, and I don't want to just do things just to do them if you don't feel like you're learning anything. And it's really just doing more of the same of what we've done, but obviously got to be fine-tuned. So I have small little residuals of masks down in here. So we got to figure out what that is. It's not from the pillows. It's not from the actual bed. And it's in the Tia layer. So we got to find which one of these that has an edge. And this again came with me shrinking her down. And then one of these, here we go, curves got moved as well, and then the bottom of it then get exposed, and it creates a hard line at the bottom of our picture. So we got to come in here and mask this whole bottom out. I'm going to do this a little quicker. I'm going to select that and that. There. I'm getting really excited. Starting to feel like we're coming to the end of this. I'm going to try to move Tia one more time. And this time I'm going to move the bed as well. So we come in, do the bed, Tia, all the hair, and just going to try to see what this does if you move it over. So the reason for me doing this is this lining up so well. I love how this kind of leans up here and it almost connects with the line of his elbows. But I'm not sure if, yeah, it's a little tough. Maybe right in there. It's so subtle, so subtle. I think actually it was better where I had it, where this overlaps a tiny bit. We move it out a little bit like that, maybe. Feels better. So I'm going to utilize some of these highlights here and see if I can create a little bit more interest in one more area. So I'm going to enter the quick mask. That was too big. Let me see. It will be this light here that spills this way, and hopefully it will help me connect the spaces a little bit better. So we're going to go underneath Tia and right in here and push that up a bit. And also in the blues. I like that. Kind of helps lead the eye in and separate this space here a little bit. It feels a little uniform though. So what we're going to do is to select this and then maybe just do a soft brush and create it a little stronger in the middle, a little narrower, just like that. One more thing we want to do is to select this area down here, which is part of the transition, and it feels a little bit too warm compared to what's happening in the hallway. So I'll do one more attempt at maybe cooling that up. So let's see. Think that helped. Now you see this green yellowish tone in here and the bluer tones here, and then we add some blues in here like that, and maybe we'll put a little green into it too. There we are. Perfect. One of the very first things we started with, let me see, we have a crazy composite here for a picture that was supposed to be quite simple. A few things that I'd like to do is clean up this in here. We have some residual here, I believe that's from the pillow. Let me see if we can do that right away. Like that. So I would like to clean this up. We had the beautiful highlight on this door that could be spilling from this. So I just want to turn that on again and see if that's close at all, because if it is, then we could do it real quick. So we come into our back plate and there's our door, and I like it. Now I do like the bottom highlight too quite a bit, so maybe it's not one or the other. Maybe we'll try to use both. So now the shapes of these doors are, a little bit different here. So maybe I'll just try to use the bottom part of this and we'll make it bluer. And I'll just keep the top of this. And you're going to see me do this quite a bit in these other pictures. Whenever I'm in a location, I always look around and I think, what would happen if I put this piece there or that piece there? I never really stop looking. So it's not a process of, oh, I'm going to shoot exactly this. It sort of morphs as I'm in it. In this case, oh, this highlight looks beautiful on the door as it shimmers off that wood, and maybe that could be a piece that we could put in here. So it's an ongoing process all the time, for sure. So this is our right side here. Let me see. You're going to come all the way down here and do a solid color layer. I think that's the simplest way to make this door go bluer. I'm going to connect it here, put it onto color. That's way blue. I'm just going to follow the blue tone of the door right in there. I'm going to fill that with black, and then we're going to come in and brush this blue tone in. I like it further down here too, actually, like that. Feels a little warm to match this, so let's see if we push a little bit more blue tone in it. And we're going to take this towards the green. That was too much. But you could see the slider. When I first started, it was a little too magenta in there. So I'm just going to try to find a blue there maybe. Yeah. Too magenta in here. Now maybe we took it too far, but we can add more blue as well. It's a little green. So we're gonna just slide it up a tiny bit. There. Maybe a little bit more. If we double click it. A few more things before we're done. I want to bring a little bit more attention to this area. So I want to tone down the bed, and then I want to bring a highlight to Tia's face. And I think that will be the last pieces for today. I'm going to come to the top, and I'm going to tone that down. Again, it's dodging and burning, and everything is done using curves. So it might be confusing with all these curve layers, but it's truly a magnificent way of doing things because we have so much control. You could do a dodge and burn layer using these and you won't really see what you're doing. So here you could infinitely pull it back and forth using both the S shape or just a down pull shape. Set up here the opacities and fills. You could do blending modes, to only affect the saturation, luminosity, and color. So using curves is really, for me, the way to go. So I hope you enjoy the process, that it's not too confusing, and that you find something in this that you learn with me. The last bit, after toning that down, same again, using the brush, using the quick mask tool, and we're going to come in and add a tiny bit of a highlight. And we're going to put this into the Tia folder. So as I look at this, right, there's a little discrepancy in the pieces. So to help that, I'm going to push this blue tone up a little bit. Not down, up a little bit. There. And I think that is it. I would love to go through every single mask with you, but I think we're going to do this on 3 more images. And I think I want to save this one to the end, because as you go through this tutorial, you see me do this one and you mask it up. You see me do the next 3 photo shoot. You will get a good sense of how I do my masks. And at the end, you could add this as an extra where you watch me finish this for another, I would say this would maybe take me another half hour, at least 45 minutes, to go through all the different masks and clean this up. There's a few things here that I definitely would continue doing, and that is I would blur this a little bit. It's a sharp spot right in the middle of the picture. I would blur this part a little bit. Obviously I got to come in and redo this after I moved Tia around. So a blur here, a blur there, and maybe I would blur him a little bit more because he feels a little sharp. And those are the missing elements. But for now, I think we're gonna call this picture done. I would just say thank you. I'm honored if you sat with me this whole time finishing up this picture. Now I challenge you, I encourage you to go out and shoot a piece of someone's Satan on a bed. The next chapter, I'll talk a little bit about it. We'll give you some lighting diagrams and you get the assignment really, which I talked about several times, but we're gonna cover it again in the next chapter.